It is Locked On Jazz for the 20th of December. The Jazz go to Cleveland and get manhandled, just like they did in Milwaukee. What does this tell us about where the Jazz are, how badly they need Kelly Olynyk, and where has the passing gone? We'll talk about it, plus late game watching. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making every day better to be a Jazz fan. I'm discombobulated. I'll tell you why in a second. This show is free and available on all platforms and all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. So we're in this cool hotel. It's neat. Definitely feels different, kind of fun. Not sure I agree with the guys. One of the coaches was saying he thinks it's like top 4. I would quibble. Super good coffee shop. Madcap right next to it, so that's a strong plus. But it's one of these modern, cool places that does not have a desk. This is kind of an in thing in the hotel world right now, is to no longer have desks, which is great unless you need to work, which on a back end of a back-to-back is the only thing I'm actually going to do in Detroit today. I went on a walk, actually. I went to this cool little Midwestern breakfast diner. And so I really have no choice here, either to give you like a shot up my butt like I just did, give you like this weird, like I don't know what to do, and I'm super uncomfortable. So I have no desk. I just can sit on this couch and chill with you today and do the show. Jazz get manhandled last night by the Cavaliers. You know, the first thing is the Jazz have faced 2 teams that could win the title. Maybe not this year for Cleveland. But they're really good. And Donovan is, as we talked about yesterday, is playing at as high a level. The game just looks so easy to him right now. And so the Jazz got handled, and we'll talk about it. There are some things that are going on that we need to kind of zero in on. I want to just say what a wonderful night. I've been really lucky to be in this league for an awfully long time. I think I'm on my 30th year covering the league. I'm pretty certain that's right. I'm in my 28th or something, involved in pre-halftime postgame, and so I do walk into arena and know people from this. And then it's a funny little world about the NBA. I've tried to explain to you before that you actually feel like you're in this family, and yet you're not, because you only see them for like 5 minutes. So Antonio Lang is just simply one of the best human beings I've ever met. And the best way I can say it about Antonio Lang is former Jazz assistant, now Cavaliers assistant. I've really never met anyone who changes the energy in a room better than Antonio Lang. Every single time I ever see him, I leave with more energy than I had before I saw him. It's great. It was wonderful to see him. I got a few minutes with Ricky Rubio. I got a few minutes with Howell Neto. I got a few minute with Donovan. I talked to Donovan's trainer, Murph, for a long time. Got an update on life. And so it was just a really cool night. Like, it was a reminder that these are people, and there's camaraderie, and there's humans, and the Jazz franchise has been through enough that there's just so many people around, and last night was kind of the peak of it. And it was good to see Don. He seems great, but I couldn't give you a lot of insight, but he looks great on the court as well. So cool stuff. All right, let's get to the Jazz. This is so uncomfortable. So I'm not surprised at all that Kelly Olynyk missing derailed the Jazz last night for a few reasons. One is, one of the main premises of why the Jazz made that trade was because they wanted to be a functional, viable basketball team. Like, without Kelly Olynyk, there was a real concern that the Jazz, that if they had not made a deal and got Kelly Olynyk as kind of a ball-moving center, that there was a real possibility that it was going to be super hard for the Jazz to actually play viable basketball. And I think that showed to be true last night. Last night, the Jazz threw fewer passes than they've thrown on any night all season long. Well, I'm not surprised. Kelly Olynyk's not on the floor. And we'll get into passing here in a little bit. There's two different aspects to passing. There's two different things that are important when we talk about passing. And I think that, and we'll get into that. But the Jazz are just, they're 3 points per 100 possessions better when Kelly Olynyk is on the floor offensively. He just makes the ball move and makes things happen. And I've called he and Mike Conley the threads that hold the fabric together. And we saw when we lost Mike Conley, we could kind of fight through it for a while, but then when it really mattered, we couldn't. And I think with Kelly Olynyk, it's actually he's almost more vital for two reasons. One is the ball movement I'm talking about. He comes up, he moves the ball, he's a 0.5 player, he's always getting off of it. And the second is the floor spacing. I don't think you can play Walker Kessler and Jared Vanderbilt at the same time. We don't have a choice. But since neither of them have a threatening outside game yet, that is not a lineup that I think can work. And I don't think that Will Hardy disagrees with me since how fast Malik Beasley came in to the game each time. The other thing is that it puts Jared Vanderbilt in too many important defensive positions, and Jared Vanderbilt's defense is better on the weak side than on the ball, and it's better if he can wreak havoc rather than be fundamental. How's that? I think that's the way to say it on Vanderbilt. By the way, I'm pretty certain that that Will Hardy agrees with me. Walker Kessler and Jared Vanderbilt had played 3 possessions together all season long prior to last night. And it was not. It was not a lineup that the Jazz were using at all. So that's not surprising. And so without Kelly Olynyk, this is really the point. This is why they went and acquired Kelly Olynyk for Bojan Bogdanovic. They probably could have gotten a first-round draft pick had they included Jared Vanderbilt or somebody else in a trade. For all this talk I keep seeing about why didn't the Jazz get a first-round draft pick for Bojan when they could have? Well, clearly they couldn't have for Bojan Bogdanovic as Bojan Bogdanovic, or they would have. Funny how that works. Danny didn't say, I don't want a first-round pick. But when they could clear the space they needed to make future deals, which haven't happened yet, and get somebody like Kelly Olynyk who makes you a viable player who Danny knows up close and personal how valuable he is, that's why he made that trade. My understanding is had they wanted to get another first-round pick, it was going to cost them another player. Somebody was going to have to take Bojan Bogdanovic and someone for a first-round pick. You can discuss whether you want that, but you're taking a lot of salary back at that point, and the Jazz needed to make some salary changes. So Olynyk is completely incredibly important to this team. Like when Mike Conley goes out, there really is not another player on the roster that does what Mike Conley does. We don't really have another point guard. And when Kelly Olynyk goes out, we don't have another ball mover. And that became abundantly obvious. I've got some numbers for it. It's the thing about our passing and our ball movement and the way we play is it's super fragile. If you go back to where we were when the season started, the first show I did when I was not somewhat silhouetted out by the background sun that just changed, for those of you watching on YouTube. The very, very, very first show I did of the year was, will this team pass the basketball? That there are no natural passers on the team. The fact is there's 2, Mike Conley and Kelly Olynyk. And when we've missed one of them, it's been pretty obvious. I'm going to dig into some numbers for you next to show you how fragile our ball movement position actually is for everything. Today's show is brought to you in part by our good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs do a wonderful, wonderful job with all of their customer service, vehicles, things, because they want to make sure you have a no-regrets experience. They've been a member of our community for over 80 years. And then you add in what Hyundai brings to the table. What Hyundai brings to the table is the car that's the most affordable with the most bells and whistles that you can possibly get, whether it's the beautiful Palisade, whether it's the zippy fun Kona, the Tucson and Santa Fe that are in the middle of that SUV lineup, whether it's the North American Car of the Year, the Elantra, or the Sonata I'm driving right now. The lineup is simple, straightforward, gives you great value for your dollars, and it's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. Stop by any of those locations, but first email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, so we can make sure to give you the VIP treatment you deserve by being a Locked On listener. Today's show also brought to you by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want whenever you want from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for any occasion on or budget. U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia. Book a spacious SUV, a minivan for a family trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget or just need to go from A to B. I have some friends who, whenever they go on a long drive vacation, they just rent a car, so don't wear their car out. This is where Turo would be perfect. Or use it to test drive the new electric vehicle. Many Turo hosts even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. Turo.com. Thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. And for your second listen today, grab on to Locked On Sports Today. The 22-minute recap of everything that's going on. I just listened to it. Jalen Hurts' big story of who has the edge in the NFC if Hurts is hurt. Are the Lions a legitimate playoff team? And some interesting thoughts about how the NFL is evolving from Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Plus all sorts of other recaps along the way, including Dane becoming the Blazers' all-time leading scorer. Congratulations to the Weber State Wildcat. And the Weber State Wildcats beat Utah State last night. All right. Ball movement. Passing. Ball passing is interesting. There's two numbers that I like to look at when I look at passing. So one of them is just passes. And honestly, there's no direct correlation between the number of passes a team throws and whether their offense is good or bad or whether they win or lose. It really goes to the team. It's an indicator of how a team plays and what a team does. But if you go back to the Houston Rockets with James Harden, they didn't pass, and they won. The Warriors with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they pass, they win. So it's unique to each team. There's no direct indicator. Then in regards to the quality of passes, I do like the number of potential assists. There's a little bit of a problem in this, but the reason I like potential assists is because, frankly, once the good pass is made for a shot, it's not really the passer's fault whether or not the ball goes in the basket or not. And it tells you a little bit of how many shots your passing is creating. However, there is great value to passes that are thrown that are not thrown solely for the assist. So there's actually some value to let's get the ball moving. Let's make the initial drive to the basket, kick it. Next guy drives, kicks it. Next guy drives, kicks it. The old blender. And there's only one potential assist out of that, and there can be a multitude of passes. So I think that when you look at that, you have to kind of understand that this number is not like the be-end-all of all numbers. It's an interesting number, but it's not the be-all, end-all of numbers. But in the case of the Jazz, I do think there's some telling things here for you. One is that the Jazz are only 19th in passes thrown in the NBA. So we talk about our ball movement and our obvious unselfishness. Well, that's a Quinn's phrase, but we've that kind of same concept of how we're playing the game, that we're moving it, we're playing together, there's never one guy, we really don't have ball movers naturally. We're 19th in the league in passes thrown. Our 5 highest games of passes thrown all took place before November 15th. So if you start to break down when we actually have thrown passes, it's decreasing as the year goes on. Our 5 highest passing games all took place before November 15th. 3 of the 5 were in October. So 3 of our 5 highest passing games were in October. Of our top 10 passing games this year, number of passes, again, no direct correlation necessarily that passes mean wins or passes mean better offense, but on this group, I think in isolated inside the team, it tells you a little bit. The 3 times this year that we've hit the top 10, or the 3 times this month, we've hit the top 10 of our passes. So 3 games of our top most passes games are in December. 2 games against New Orleans and 1 against Golden State. Now, that also could be the way New Orleans plays, right? Or it could be we were on it. We were at home, we were on it, and the Golden State home game. Those are home games. Last night was the fewest passes we've thrown in any game all year. 238. We average in the 275, 280 range. So last night was the fewest passes we've thrown in any game all year long. 238. Interesting note, Milwaukee was 280, I think it was. I'll have to double check that. I think that's what my notes say. So that wasn't so bad. Our 4th lowest passes thrown game of the year was in our loss at home to Detroit. We only threw 256. 238 is pretty low, by the way. 238 gets into one of the lower passing game numbers of the season. So if we try to look at it, and our high pass game of the year is against Minnesota on December 21st, second game of the year, 334. A few nights later, we go 317 against Memphis. If you look at our low pass number of the game, it's 238. And then 238, by the way, is 15 fewer passes than we've thrown in any game all season long. Detroit was 256, is our 4th lowest at Atlanta and at the Clippers. Our 3 lowest are all road games, which I do think is interesting. And we do seem to throw less passes on the road than we do at home. And I mentioned the Milwaukee game was right in the middle of the pack. It was a 289, actually. So this is just maybe unique to last night. And there was an awful lot going on last night with returns and Donovan and all those things. And we got pretty discombobulated by a great defensive team. I mean, that's the other thing. Without Kelly Olynyk, we lose the passing. We also just played back-to-back games against the number 1 and number 2 defenses in the NBA, and they're evidently better defensively than we are as the 4th best offense in the league. Which is surprising. The 4th best offense in the league, which has really worked well this year, got up against those 2 teams and just Jared Allen at the rim, Brook Lopez at the end bothered the heck out of us. We lost our flow. We got tight, and then I think we went one-on-one. Clearly. The data shows it. So I think there's something to that. Then the stagnant offense leads to runouts. Fast break numbers last night were absurd. I think it was like 30-2 or something crazy. And so when you suddenly get stagnant offensively and you're not moving and they're not out of place and they're all set, they get the rebound and they go. And boy, did they ever last night. I think they had 13 dunks. So, again, they all play together. It's the beauty of this game. The beauty of this game is 2 parts. It all plays together, and it's all fragile. And so when we don't have Kelly Olynyk, who's the thread that works the fabric together, who moves the basketball, and then we stop moving it, then our defense gets worse. Then we suddenly have no defense. Now, in a little bit of a defense to the defense last night, that was some real shooting. I think when I looked at it, on expected field goal percentage versus actual field goal percentage. So you can look at where a team takes their shots and figure out what they should have shot. Now, here's what's crazy about last night. Cleveland got unbelievable shots and would have throttled us had they shot their average. Okay? We got bad shots and shot badly, and they got good shots and shot well. So in no way, shape, or form am I about to tell you that last night's game, I don't actually buy that last night's game was a make or miss game, because even if everyone made or missed as they were supposed to, Cleveland would have won by a lot because their shots were so much better than what the Jazz were getting. However, in the midst of Cleveland getting so much better shots than the Jazz, they shot 15 percentage points better effective field goal percentage than they were anticipated to based on the shots they got. So they should have had a heck of a night, which was 57% EFG, which is a little bit above league average, and they would have won. And instead, they shot 72% of EFG between their three-point shooting, where I think they were 15 of 26 for 58% from three, and their two-point shooting. We, because we would not have ball movement and did not play well, and their defense discombobulated us, and Jared Allen took away the rim, and all these things, we took a bunch of really not very good shots, 23 kind of floater zone shots. Our expected field goal percentage was 50%, and we only shot 44. So the make or miss aspect of the game last night exacerbated the issue, but the issue was that Cleveland's defense was so good that they bent us offensively. They were wildly physical with us. We stopped running our routes. We were not physical back. We got pushed off our routes. The ball movement stopped. Kelly Olynyk wasn't there to hold it together. We threw the fewest passes. We got bad shots, and we got blown out. Cleveland's really good. All right, I want to do some late game watching with you, if I may. I got a bunch of notes from games. I did not get to all of last night's games. I prepped for Detroit instead when we got to the hotel last night. And so I'll catch up for you on Thursday as well. So, but we'll do that here in just a second. Let me have that for you. Looking at some of the games, there's an interesting trend or two taking place in the NBA and late game watching that I want to share with you here today on the program. It is Locked On Jazz, your daily Utah Jazz podcast. Such a pleasure to bring it to you. Today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at Bet Online. Bet Online, where the game starts. Make sure you get all your action at betonline.net. Take advantage of the fun, the interplay, all the good stuff that takes place at Bet Online. The Jazz tonight in Detroit. I'll have to check that line for you, but you can get in on football, baseball, futures, all the NFL action that's taking place as well here with the playoffs nearing. Jacksonville and the Jets are the Thursday night game. It's a pick'em. I have a few comments if you're betting Jacksonville Jets game. Jazz tonight, first game out, we're a 2.5-point favorite. Warriors are a 5-point dog in New York against the hot Knicks. Miami are a 4.5-point favorite against the struggling Chicago Bulls. Phoenix a 7-point favorite against Washington. And Denver and Memphis is the game of the night. Memphis goes into Denver as a 1.5-point favorite. Wow, that's a little bit surprising. Christmas Day games are up on the board right now. You can get involved on all those. As the Sixers will play the Knicks, the Lakers and the Mavericks, Bucks and the Celtics, Grizzlies and Warriors, Suns and Nuggets are the Christmas Day. It's all for you at betonline.net, where the game starts. So, late game watch. For those who have not heard this segment before, welcome. We do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays if I've had a chance to get all the watches in. I try to catch up. What I try to do is go through and watch the final I really started with the final 5 minutes. Then I realized as a play-by-play announcer there was real value to backing it up to the final 9 minutes because it allowed me to see all 10 players or all 9 players every plays. So, I'm watching for trends, action, how teams close, what teams are doing defensively, what players they're going to, and how comfortable they look. So Cleveland earlier this year looked incredibly uncomfortable in their three-man game between Mitchell, Garland, and Allen, and now look much, much more comfortable, and they're using Mobley in it more than Allen. And it also tells you a little bit how teams are playing defensively. Are they switching? Are they dropping? There's two things that are really interesting to me that are taking place here. So one was early in the year, I think I talked to you guys about a bunch of teams were throwing zone out. We're now seeing zone out of timeouts, almost universally out of a timeout, that it's not even surprising. And then never again. So the early season, like, we'll try zone, seems to be gone. The second thing that I think we saw a lot of, that I saw a lot of early in the year, was a lot of plays. A lot of actions, a lot of plays, a lot of movement, a lot of, beautiful sets, fun stuff. That's gone. What we've almost gotten back to by 30 games into the season is almost everyone switching 1 through 5 late. This is where the drop big, Rudy Gobert, Jared Allen even, but Cleveland's even switching late games. Cleveland switches 1 through 5 with Jared Allen. Almost everyone's switching 1 through 5 now. So that makes the drop big that, like Rudy Gobert, this is where Danny Ainge, I think, thought was you can't win a championship with him and you can't pay him $40 million, so I'm going to trade him, is the drop big, Walker Kessler, is super valuable in this league still for about 25 to 30 minutes a night. But it's not the final 5 minutes of a game anymore. There just are not, no one's playing very, very little drop big late in games. Almost universally now everyone's switching 1 through 5. The impact that almost everyone is switching 1 through 5 is it seems like no one's running plays anymore. Oklahoma City started the year running a bunch of really interesting plays. A lot of cool stuff. Giddey coming in here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doing this. Interesting actions off Lou Dort. Doing a bunch of stuff. Nope. They're now isolating Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and just letting him go. The amount of teams are just getting the guy a ball at the nail. The nail is the spot in the middle of the free throw line because it's the impossible spot to double team across the board. Luka is just getting double teamed every time he touches the ball. And so what offense right now, 35 games into the season, late in game, has evolved into is either you have a superstar like a Luka, and you literally just bring the ball up the floor, run your first action, wait for them to double team, and then you move it. They don't do a lot in Dallas to get Luka off the ball, come into the ball, try to get him an advantage on a tight curl to make him make a play before. It's like they're pretty willing to take the double team, let Luka then move it, and see what they get. The other thing you're just seeing out of actions, because what I think has happened to enough teams is they run this action, people switch it 1 through 5, they get caught late in the shot clock, and they're going to ISO, which suddenly they're late in the clock, is that the coaches are like, you know what, I'm just better off ISOing. Miami runs all this stuff through Bam at the elbow and Bam, and they get nothing out of it, and then they end up going to Jimmy Butler for the ISO. But if you don't go to the if you run your stuff like everyone says, oh, run plays late in game, and it doesn't work because everyone's now switching 1 through 5, then you got 7 seconds, 6 seconds left on the shot clock, you're kind of screwed. And so from a coach's standpoint, your quick switch on that is to decide, okay, well, I'm just going to get into the one-on-one ISO, see if I can break someone down. We'll play out of it or force them into a double team, and we'll play out of that rather than all this action. And frankly, it's made some late-game stuff less interesting. I'm not going to lie. It's way less interesting. So let me run through some of these games. Dallas, Cleveland, and overtime. This is largely where this is from. Then Cleveland, Indiana. Cleveland zone out of a timeout. Mitchell always circling behind the action. And they ran, and J.B. Bickerstaff runs some good stuff here. Minnesota versus Oklahoma City. OKC comes out with a zone at the 6:43 mark. Minnesota, no Gobert on the floor. He's out. They're playing 5 out and just driving. Interesting, by the way, Jalen Williams, the rookie out of Santa Clara, I think it is. That's the one, is finishing games. Minnesota dropped into a zone with under a minute to play. And then my notes are OKC's not running anything. And then the other side is OKC doubling Edwards to get the ball out of his hands. And so Edwards, then Minnesota goes to Edwards at the nail. So it's not just Joel Embiid at the nail. It's just not Giannis at the nail. They literally went to Edwards at the nail. And if you give Edwards the ball at the nail, incredibly hard where you're bringing the double team. He just tries to power through. Toronto's entire late game offense is Pascal Siakam at the nail. Brooklyn, Toronto. First of all, Brooklyn looks really good. It is clear, by the way, Durant does not like contact. Juancho Hernan-Gomez was all over him, and Durant was going nuts. And interestingly, also, had not seen this before, but Toronto was attacking Durant. Toronto was going at Durant and making Durant play defense. Toronto's offense late game is interesting. It's either Van Vliet early offense, pull into a three, or it's Siakam at the nail. And then they're going Barnes ISO more late in the last 3 times I've watched Toronto against Sacramento, against Brooklyn. And actually, Barnes is having some more success, but this team is searching. They are losing. They are lost 6 straight, and they are now changing the way they are playing late game. And that's what Sacramento did earlier this year and actually found the answer. So it'll be interesting to see. My notes had Siakam not quite a go-to guy earlier. So that's my late game observations. I don't need to bore you with each and every game I've watched late game. I try to put it into a bigger capsule so you can watch the league and kind of have that overall take on it. That is Locked On Jazz today. Jazz and the Pistons. Not previewing you a great deal on the Pistons. They're not good. They're 8-24. They're 23rd in the league offense, 29th in the league defensively. Their half-court defense is 29th in the NBA. They go to the free throw line a ton. If we are slow and lazy defensively, we will get cooked. There's nothing they do that's not in the bottom 10 defensively in the NBA, so if we move the basketball and play, we should be able to be all right offensively. But again, that was a bottom 5 passing game of the year for us earlier this year. All right, that is Locked On Jazz. Hope you have a great one. Talk to you soon. Tomorrow, in fact. See ya.